This morning, this morning we're going to be talking about the Paragraphs module, bridging the gap between content entry and beautiful layouts. This is going to be a Drupal 8 specific talk, though there is a module for Drupal 7. So, my name is Jimmy. This is Jessica Larsen from Orbit Media Studios, and basically we've been building Drupal websites for I'd say about 5 years. And I specifically started my career a long time ago with WordPress, switched over to Drupal 7 and then to Drupal 8, and trying to figure out how to get the two of them working together in a way that each one can benefit the other from what they're learning in the community. So that's kind of my thing.
Yeah, and I'm Jessica Larsen. So I've been at Orbit Media for about 10 years now. Drupal for the past 5 years, and sprinkle in WordPress sites every once in a while too. So work for a company called Orbit Media Studios, like we said. We specialize in Drupal and web design and development agency. We're located just north side in Chicago. We specialize in both Drupal and WordPress development. And we actually do have a job opening now for a senior UX UI web designer. If you guys know anybody's interested, we're a fun, collaborative group of individuals. Or at least, it's just a fun place to go to work every day. Some of the awesome sites that we have worked on. Here's some of the ones that we've done in Drupal specifically. So we have Lincoln Park Zoo, Midtown Athletics, and ATI Physical Therapy. So yes, enough about Orbit. We're here to talk about the Paragraphs module. You can download, this is a contrib module. You can download it at drupal.org/project/paragraphs. So why this module is important for us. So as the trend for web, for like page layouts to get gradually longer, it seems more necessary now to like break up like the main page content to separate editable widgets down the page and make it easy for the client to manage as well. So when the editor goes in to edit a page, instead of just creating all the content in a single WYSIWYG area, they are now like targeted to like add you want to add a paragraph. So you add a paragraph, you can choose from a predefined components onto the page from a single node. Each one of these are called paragraphs within the module. Since we work with a few different CMSs, we just decided that paragraphs didn't really mean a lot to the clients. So you can actually go in and change the labeling of these. So within Orbit, we have like sidebar widgets or page blocks. So you actually go in and edit those configurations. So it makes more sense for the user as well. These are actually all sortable with drag and drop. So when the client first goes in to edit the page, and they click on Add New Paragraph or a page block or sidebar element, they're confronted with which kind of type do you want to add. So each one of these types are configurable in the backend, since there are actually, these paragraph types are entities itself. So they're all fieldable. You can add different fields like images and text, video. You're crazy, you could add views in these or any references. So you can basically add anything you can like you would a content type for any other kind of content type. You can actually, and then as you add them, you can intermix the different types on the page as well, which is very convenient. So it's different than let's say field collections where you have your item, you can only add a certain type of field collections each time. So these you can actually intermix on the page. When you first set up the module, it'll come with no predefined content types. So these are all paragraph types. Sorry. It comes with no predefined paragraph types. So it's up for the designer and the dev to specify which kind of paragraph types to add for a specific site. So it's really highly customizable, and it meets the different client site requirements and branding. So when we first dove into Drupal 8, we were looking at all of our options, and we were looking at configurable blocks, field collections. In Drupal 7, we were using the Beans module. The Beans module allowed us to create different configurable blocks then so that's like going to store another place in Drupal, and then you just reference them from your page. We found that going forward with Drupal 8 that the paragraphs module worked best for us because each one of these are editable straight from the page instead of hosted somewhere else and you have to reference them. It makes it a lot easier for the client to find out where to edit those content pieces.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you use paragraphs in 7?
We did not use paragraphs in 7. Yeah, we're using the beans module.
Okay.
So it was like, there's pros and cons of each. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Just 1 second. So in Drupal 7, we worked with a guy named Frederick, and Frederick was one of the co-authors of the beans module itself originally. So he sold us pretty hard on the beans module, and when we looked at it, it actually was very powerful. You could create a bean fairly easily, and then normally with Drupal 7, you would drop the bean into a region, and you would say, okay, this is where it should display on these pages, what have you. When Jessica is saying that they were referenced to pages, what we were actually doing is using an entity reference to the beans themselves so that the clients could drop them onto the page in the order they wanted rather than dropping them into a block layout and saying, here's every single block on the page. You know, this one should only show up when this criteria is met, this one when this criteria is met. We were doing it in a way where it says, here's a field, what blocks do you want in this area and what blocks do you want in this area? And so when she's saying that the clients had to go and edit them somewhere else, what she's saying is that they had to go to a totally separate part of the site to edit these blocks with no context of where they are and then drop them into the regions where they were supposed to go. So Beans was very powerful for us, but we like paragraphs a lot. Even though Beans technically is kind of like part of Drupal 8 now, it's cool that it works and it's amazing, but later on in the talk I'm going to describe why we actually shied away from that to move towards paragraphs.
Yeah, and like paragraphs, like the idea of the paragraphs is to take what you can do in the content editor in the WYSIWYG and basically split up on a page. So this is technically like the page content itself as well. So if you want to make more like global elements, then maybe that's where like the Beans module will come in for like the more global elements that you would use. All right, so paragraph types are entities. So which means it's highly customizable. You can easily create new paragraph types, add any kind of field you could as you would any other kind of content type, as well as all the field formatters are able to. Because they are entities, it works with the search API. You can query them with the views, and you can also export them with features. So if you have your standard set of these paragraph types, you're able to export them to like another environment or another site. So you have your standard base site of paragraph types, and then you can expand upon that, which is awesome. Yes. They are translatable. Out of the gate, it's easy to configure, easy to set up, and highly supported. It's frequently maintained. There's lots of documentation around it, and yeah. So some examples of some paragraph types that we have created for our internal sandbox. You could do stuff like you could add an image field and a text field, as well as configure like the background color or if the image should be on the left or right. So that could be like a paragraph type. You could actually add a paragraph type with like a video and text. You could just do a single open WYSIWYG content area, or you could do something more complex with like a repeatable image field, and you can have it display as a grid, a carousel, or slideshow, and so it'd be easy for the client to add to like other pages as well. So why is this great for our clients? Yeah. So the client feels more in control. So since each paragraph is independent from one another, they are able to add any sort of layout to it, like to any page. So like each page can be more unique than the next. So it keeps like the pages looking as flexible as possible and unique, but yet still keeping the design consistent throughout. And if they want to add like a slideshow on a About Us page and add another slideshow and then like where to buy, they will do so without contacting us each time. Just fill in the fields. So with more structure, the clients are or the designer is able to have more fun with the design instead of allowing the client to, instead of like for the content editor or the client to rely on them, like you need to put this inline class here, this table here. They could easily just go in and fill out these fields, and you know exactly how it's going to look on the front end, especially when like now the sites could have like different screen widths, and as it responds, you know exactly how your content's going to respond versus a full WYSIWYG where it's just really uncontrollable and can get kind of messy. Oh yeah, easy to manage. So it's very easy to manage when the content editor client's looking at the page. They know exactly. They go click on edit, and they know exactly where all their content is to edit right straight from there, instead of searching around in the backend for what block is placed here, what block is placed there, and edit there. It's all straight from within the page. And so it's like they edit there and they could go straight to the front end, and they know exactly how it's going to look as well. So it's just easy conversion back and forth with the content and look and feel of the site. Some of the gotchas of this module are these configured paragraphs. So if you add a slideshow to like the About Us page, you're not able to take that same configuration and add it to another page. So when you go to like the Where to Buy page and you add a slideshow, you have to start over with the fields. So they are not reusable.
No, the content.
The content within those types are not reusable. Yeah.
So basically, when you're adding a paragraph type, and you take that paragraph type and you add it with what's called the entity revision field. So does everyone know what entity reference fields are? Okay. So what paragraphs is kind of telling you to do is they're saying, take these paragraph types, create them over here. So create, let's just say, an image with text, right, that Jessica showed. So you have your image with text paragraph type. You add fields to it. You add the image field, the content field. We have an alignment field, whether it's on the left or the right. We have a background image field. We have whether or not there's parallax. All of that is reusable, but what's not reusable is the content. So say you go to the About page and you add a carousel, and it has 5 slides in it with 5 different captions. That piece of content lives on that page. You can't join that content to a separate page. It's not like a traditional block where you can place it in a region and it shows up on every page of your site. That content is tied to that node. So that's the part that's not reusable. The paragraph types themselves can be attached to any node that has the entity reference field on it, but the content itself lives on the node.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So does that mean that content is embedded within its host node for revision purposes, or is it a separate entity when it's stored?
So I don't actually know the answer to that question, but I do know that the reason why we're using the entity reference revisions module is because they're both created and maintained by the same people, so the paragraphs module and the entity reference revisions module. But I do know that when you make a change to the parent entity, it updates the reference entity. But I'm not sure exactly in terms of where that data is stored.
Okay. So from a logical point of view, it's revisions as part of the parent entity?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and then another thing is like in the back end, when you're adding a new paragraph, it comes, so when you first click on add new paragraph and you click your type, it'll show you all the fields. So you edit those fields, you click another one. Those fields, each block is open in the back end. So it'll be kind of messy because you first get to it and you see all this open content. So without any like expandable collapsing on these blocks, it's hard to sort them. But those are just like nitpicky things. That's all. It's still a great tool. So the pros overweigh the cons on this versus the other modules we're looking at. All right, now Jimmy's going to demonstrate how we implemented this on our internal sandbox.
Cool. All right, so I need to find the actual screenshot that I took. But how do I get this out of here? All right. Go. I didn't do it. Okay. Does this work? All right, cool. Okay. All right, so this is a demo page that we created for today. This does not have a header, does not have a footer. It's very lackluster in any kind of design, but it will illustrate the fact that all the concepts that we're talking about that paragraphs can do, we're going to basically prove to you that they work. So what you'll see here off the bat is that this is just a standard interior site that's across the web on all websites. You have your title, you have your tabs, you have your language switcher, your content, and then in the sidebar here, these are paragraphs, but for illustrative purposes, we call them widgets. So clients, if you say, hey, you have like 3 different kinds of paragraph types, they're going to think they can place those anywhere on the site. And in reality, they can, but you don't want them to, right? So you can also limit what they can place where in the field configuration. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So you can see here that this is just what we call an image widget. It has an image, it has a caption, and if you click on it, it will open in a lightbox. These are very easy to build, not very complicated at all. This one is a regular image widget. You have a video widget. If you click it, it will play you a video. This is an image paragraph that we created. These are what we call page blocks. So page blocks was a pre-existing thing before working on this at Orbit. That was the naming that they had for any large block that shows up below the content. We call them page blocks. So when I say page blocks, I'm referring to these giant things. So every one of these paragraphs can have a subtitle. It can have content. It can have an image. You click it, again, opens in a lightbox. So we have an image one. We have a video one. We have a content with a parallax background. I don't know if you can see it. It's moving very slightly. We have a grid paragraph with the Drupal 8 logo, our logo, and Octocat. And we have a giant image at the bottom. So these are just examples of what the client can build, but they're stupid easy to build. So if you go to the edit page, you'll see that all the fields are here on the node itself. You don't have to go anywhere to manage this. But the one gotcha that Jessica was saying is it does kind of clutter up the bottom here. It's a lot of fields to kind of absorb at once, to receive at once as a client. So content training is key when it comes to this. But you'll see we have a widgets field, and in the paragraph type fields, you have all the fields for this one image widget, the fields for this image widget, the fields for the video widget, and then down below all the ones for page blocks. And to add them, it's super easy. You just click on this, you can pick which one you want, it will add it inline, and you can fill it out. Cool. Same one for page blocks, lots and lots of content, but when you get to the bottom, you have another drop down, and you have only the page blocks that we've allowed to be in this area. So to show you how easy it is, we will go to our demo that hopefully works. Paragraphs test page. Okay, so this is our test page. This is what the page looks like when there's nothing on it. If you were to edit this page, the 2 paragraph type fields down here, super bare bones. We're going to add an image page block. Cool. So let's be like, my image is great. You can pick whether the image is on the left or the right. We're going to pick on the right. We're going to find an image in the image browser. And since before, we made this presentation before yesterday, so we didn't realize that there were supposed to be a bunch of memes in here. So we'll add one. And some text. Memes are great. And then if we wanted a background image or if we wanted to be parallax, we could. We're not going to do that. And the number one thing that the designers want to do is they want background images, and the client is like, anyone I want? And we're like, yeah. So they upload dark images, they upload light images, they upload images that are blurry or whatever. So we give them the option to do light or dark text. So if you want to upload a dark image, show light text. A light image, show dark text. So we're going to say dark text, and we're going to save it. And so if you scroll down here, you see my image is great. You got your meme. Memes are great. And it's on a regular zebra stripe background. So clients love this. I mean, could we all agree that it's pretty easy to add content to this page? Didn't have to go very far to do it. You didn't have to guess what was where and when it should show up. So yeah, that's kind of how the demo works for adding content. So I'm going to show you a couple other things. How many people use Twig Files in here? Cool. How many people are like pure themers? Cool. Not very many. Okay. All right. So what I want to show you is, can I get over here? Scoop. So if you turn on the debug stuff for Twig, you'll see that Paragraphs actually has, if I can find it, now that it's gone, thank you. Let's go here. Inspect. Cool. So Paragraphs has a lot of file name suggestions. So what you can have is you can say, okay, for all paragraphs, use this Twig file. For image page block paragraphs, which is a paragraph type that we created, use this file. And then if there were even more modifiers to it, you could add more files for it as well. And it also works with a field. So right here, field node field page blocks, you can modify that field as a whole as well. So the way that we're using that, oh, I gotta get this over there now. All right. Boom. Whoa. Okay. So the way that we're using this is a file called paragraph image page block.html.twig. So that paragraph that we were looking at is loading this file. And so what we have is we are adding our own custom classes to it so we can target it with CSS. We do some pre-processing in the background to add the lightbox to it, right? So we're saying, how many people use pre-process? Yes. Okay, cool. So what we're doing is we're actually passing data from paragraphs. So the paragraph fields, we're passing it through pre-process into the Twig files. This markup is not super complicated. This markup is very simple for what we're doing with paragraphs. So you can see here we have all the normal Twig stuff. We're using Bootstrap, so we use container fluid and row in here. But you can see outputting the paragraph subtitle, super easy. Outputting the image with a lightbox, super easy, or not with a lightbox. And then the text. And how do I get out of this? Cool. Yeah, that's it. Okay. And then if you wanted to, how many people are making multilingual sites currently or in the near future? Okay, Drupal 8 multilingual is, again, stupid easy. Compared to 7, it's the easiest thing I've ever done. I kid you not. It took me, I think, like 15 hours to wrap my brain around how multilingual in Drupal 7 worked, and I took down a site doing it, and I had to work until like 10 o'clock at night on a Friday to fix it. Drupal 8, not the same. So right here, if you look at our paragraphs demo, and we switch over to Spanish, you can actually see that with very minimal configuration, we have not only our regular node in Spanish, we have our paragraphs and their fields are in Spanish as well. So we have a Spanish caption with a Spanish image. So say, for example, you wanted a different image per language, it supports that. If you want a different caption per language, it supports it. A lot of times before when we were setting this up, we actually didn't have the foresight to say, hey, like you might want to show a different image here or download a different PDF or show a different video. Because paragraphs are completely fieldable and the fields are multilingual, you can do that. So you see here all the same kind of placement of content. This is not Spanish, by the way. If you don't know what this is, it's placeholder text. So image paragraph in Spanish, again, Spanish image, Spanish lightbox, everything. It's amazing. And that's pretty much it. I mean, for the demo, that's pretty much all I have.
Are the individual paragraph entities translated, or is it just the node itself that's translated when you make the new paragraph?
So the node itself is translated. There is kind of a weird, confusing thing about paragraphs in that, like, on the main page they say, like, translating paragraphs themselves not supported. It's very misleading because you're like, well, it's translatable. Why can't I do that? The fields are what's translatable. So the entity itself, I think, is just there. But by some super Drupal 8 magic, when you render the paragraph, it's in the right language.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, then like you could have a different image and different texts for that block that's on the top right here, but you couldn't not have that there at all in the Spanish version, but there in the English version.
Actually, you could. So it's super bizarre. So you could actually have nothing here for Spanish if you wanted. The way that, if I can describe this right, the way that it used to work when we were doing this before, not in paragraphs, I think we were using maybe beans when we were doing this. If you didn't have say you had something in English or the default site language, like a widget, right? And you made a French page, it would still show the English image, the English text, the English whatever. Super annoying because you have to you either say this is just going to be in English or you have to make a French version of it, and clients don't always have content for every piece that's on the site. In this, and someone else can probably speak to it better than I can, magic.
Magic's an acceptable answer.
I don't magic people.
Cool. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Can you have the different light and dark variables like for the text? Does that just add like another class? Like how exactly does that
Sure.
translate?
So it's important to know that we want this functionality to trickle down to all of our paragraphs, right? We don't want to have redundant code anywhere or anything like redundant in Twig or what have you. So what we're doing is we have what's called the OMS Paragraphs Module, OMS being Orbit Media Studios. And so you can see here we're hooking into the pre-processed paragraph. And if you get down here to treatment, so we're saying if the field treatment is basically there and not empty, get its value. I'm sorry if this code is not very good. I'm not super great in Drupal yet. I apologize. And we're saying right here, we're setting the treatment value just for our own purposes, and then we're adding a class to the paragraph. So when the paragraph is rendered, it's going to say paragraph hyphen hyphen treatment hyphen hyphen either light or dark. And that trickles down to all the paragraphs that are pre-processed. If the field is on the paragraph, it will also be in the Twig file.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
You mentioned the gotcha that the content isn't reusable.
Mhm.
Did you figure out a workaround for that?
Not yet. This is fairly new territory for us. It's only been the last handful of months that we've actually been using this and using it on sites. We do not yet know how, but if anyone does know how, I would really love to hear it because we need to fix it. So yeah.
There are discussions in the paragraph community about how to make them reusable. There's no overall consensus or.
Yeah, we actually moved to ECK and inline entity form to replicate what paragraphs does, but give the ability to be reusable.
Yeah.
So you could do, and we have done inline entity forms inside of paragraphs before, so there's probably some combination of that to get what you're going. But I just want to know what you guys are doing.
Yeah, no, not yet.
So many discussions about it.
Yeah. Well,
Trying to figure out a solution.
a lot of the talks that we have internally are pros versus cons, or like benefits outweighing, like the negative gotchas. So for our purposes, we kind of like took note of what clients were doing, and basically we're saying, how often are you reusing this content? If it's something like a banner image or like some kind of carousel or newsletter sign up, we say make it a block, and then the block can be in the region and you can show it everywhere. But if it's something that's very content specific to that page, we say paragraphs. So any other questions?
You didn't mention panels at all, so I'm not sure if you have any experience, but I'm just curious to know how paragraphs compares with Drupal 7 fieldable panel paints.
Okay. Sorry.
No, yeah, go ahead.
So there was a panels talk a while back at MidCamp that we went to, and after looking at it, we realized that it just was not a good fit for us. So we like the client to be able to enter content, but it felt to us that they had too much control, like over a lot of things using panels, so we kind of shied away from it. I'm by no means an expert on panels. I have a very cursory understanding of how it works, but I do encourage if anyone in the audience does know about panels and can answer it, then.
I can talk a little bit to that. With panels, we found with our client that they could easily abort stuff. because it's pretty loose, or at least how we built it. And to your point, I really am big into paragraphs because you're in context, you're in the page. These are content loaders that are creating content. They're creating it in context of the page. They need to know when they add a certain piece, like that right rail is a great example. I'm seeing it, I'm not going separate. I'm not visualizing what panels maybe will render in it. It's a really simple content loader going, oh, I need to change this sentence. That's what I found.
Yeah. Seems like a more controllable area for the client to edit instead of all this control.
All right, so we are out of time. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to come up here, and we'll try to answer them the best we can. And we thank you.
Yeah.